Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our channel, Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and we've got a special video for you today, and we're actually live. We're doing this live, and I'm going to bring in my co-host right now, Janis, Gillham, Grady. Hi, Janis. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Hi, Mark. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our channel.
We want to tell everybody we really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Hit those subscribe button if you haven't already, and click the like button and all that jazz. You know the drill. Anyway, we've got a special video that we're going to be showing you today. And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and go in the comments section on the live chat. You can ask questions. Super chats are okay, super stickers, whatever you like. And we'll get to the questions after we show you. We've got photographs of our subject today, and I think you'll really appreciate it. So, Janis, tell everybody what we're going to be doing today, or what show we've got.
We are going to be discussing St. Hill. I was there in the mid-'60s, and I've got some photos together that we will go through, and I'll tell you different stories as we go through the photos and you meet some old timers.
Fabulous. And just so everybody knows, St. Hill is very famous in Scientology because that was L. Ron Hubbard's home, but also eventually it became the basis for ideal organizations, which Miscavige has turned into ideal morgues, right? But St. Hill, you're going to see the history. It was actually a big booming organization in the 1960s. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the slides, Janis, and we can get started, okay?
Okay. Okay, so St. Hill is located in a little town in Sussex called East Grinstead. And this is kind of a Tudor look. And a lot of the town looks like this. It's a very, very small little town. And there's actually, it used to be not have a lot of traffic until St. Hill was purchased by Hubbard in 1959, and then in the early 60s, people started going to St. Hill for training, and that became a lot of the business for East Grinstead. And I remember as a kid, Mary Sue every Saturday would take her 4 children into East Grinstead to go shopping. They'd go to the magic store, and Arthur would buy little magic tricks and cards and just little knickknacks for the kids to play with.
Okay.
All right, we can go to the next one. This is St. Hill Manor. So this is the actual house. And on the side closest to us, which is just 1 story, in the front there was LRH's office, and in the back was what was called the Winter Garden. And that was his dining room. And I'll show you a couple of pictures of that later on. But this was the main road going through St. Hill. And we used to, as kids, my sister and I would ride bicycles to St. Hill from East Grinstead. And we used to race up and down this little road in front of the manor. And one time Suzette, I don't know why the Hubbard children didn't have bicycles, but Suzette borrowed my sister's bicycle. And we were racing to see who could get down the hill the fastest. And Vixie, Mary Sue's dog, who was a corgi, ran out in front of Suzette, and she slammed on the front brake and, of course, went over the front wheel. And Arthur ran in and got his mom, and she came out and patched Suzette up and then got a toolkit and unbent the bicycle. And yeah, it was just, a memory as a kid there.
Is that the front, right there, the front door, like where that little portico is? Yeah.
Yes, that's the front. And to the right, on the right side, there was the servant entrance into the manor. And when you come in the servant entrance, right there on the left was the children's dining room and then the kitchen. And the kitchen the ceiling was like 2 stories high. And you go up some stairs right by the dining room up to the nursery, where there was 4 bedrooms for the Diana, Quentin, Suzette, and Arthur. And down the end where Arthur's room was, there was a door from the main part of the manor which entered those quarters. There was obviously a nursery or the servant quarters. because just at the bottom of the stairs was where the bells were. You pull a cord in the room and it rings the downstairs, and it rang at the bottom of the stairs to the nursery.
Okay. One last question before I go to the next slide. Up on the top, on the roof, was there like a patio or something up there? Like, could you go up to the top and have a view?
You know what? I don't know. I never went up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So this is the back side of the manor. And we used to go out there and play as kids. And Hubbard had actually told Arthur about using a magnifying glass with the sun to try and start a fire. So that's where we made those attempts.
Okay.
And here is the manor in the back there, and then the pavilion, and then the swimming pool. The pavilion was used as a classroom. The swimming pool, the Hubbard kids and the Gillham kids, or whoever was with the Hubbards, would go swimming there.
Was it a nice pool for that time period, or what was it like?
It was just a cement pool and cold. Very cold.
It's cold in England. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, having come from Australia and then swimming in that pool, it was cold.
I'll bet. Okay.
And then this is a view of the back of the manor from the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Mauer people have heard of Mike Mauer. Aaron's mentioned him. I've talked of him because he married Claire Popham, one of my messenger friends. Yeah. Mike used to want to build a yellow submarine and put it in that lake.
Right. Well, and then also that lake, bring it current times. I mean, Mike Rinder has mentioned that's where they used to throw people in the lake. Miscavige would throw them, during the international management events into that lake.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And It's very cold and very muddy, I'm sure.
Yeah. Commit your sins and errors to the deep and hope you arrive at better Thetan.
Yeah. Yeah. Did it have any stables or anything like that, like where you could have horses or livestock or anything?
Yeah, there were 4 horses that belonged to the Hubbard kids. Jet, which was Quinton's horse, was actually kept in this field between the manor and the lake. And we used to run from tree to tree because the trees all had wiring around them. And we'd run from tree to tree with Jet chasing us because he used to bite. And but the other horses were kept in a different field.
Now your sister became very, she's had horses all of her life. Is this where she first had the, experience of being around horses as a young girl?
No. Terry was big on horses back in Australia. She wanted one in our backyard in the suburbs.
Okay. All right, here's the next one.
Yeah, and this is just inside the manor. I've just threw that one into. That's what it looks like now. That's not what it looked like when I was there as a kid, but it did have all the fancy woodwork.
Is that like in the a entry area or what?
Yes.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And there's Hubbard standing on the back patio of the manor. You can go to the next one.
Okay.
And that's all again in the back in the rose garden.
Did he have a large staff to take care of the grounds?
I don't know how many staff he had taking care of the grounds. I never got into that. I knew a couple of the housekeepers, or the one, the nanny who watched the kids. I knew John Henry, the cook. And there's also Ken Urquhart, who was the butler. And there was a lady called Val who used to look after the horses. And those were the people that I knew. But you got to remember, I was 10 years old.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
All
right. So this is Ron. That's what everyone called him at that time, with his butler. This butler was not a Scientologist. And Ken Urquhart, who we have interviewed, and we will be showing his interview next week, replaced this gentleman as Ron's butler.
Okay.
And there is Ron being part of the East Grinstead Parade. He was always big on trying to get involved with the local community. And having staff get involved, himself trying to be involved. And we even did that on the ship with our open houses.
Okay.
And then here's Ron and Mary Sue with the children. Ron in the back is holding Diana and Arthur, and Mary Sue has Suzette and Quentin.
Okay. Now, Mary Sue, how did Hubbard, or how did they meet? Do you know the story, or what happened?
Well, what Mary Sue told me, and this was on the ship, an ex-boyfriend of hers, he came to the ship for some training, and he used to go around bragging how he used to be Mary Sue's boyfriend.
Uh-huh.
Well, he was who she dumped when she met Ron. She broke up with him to go with Ron, and Ron was 20 years her senior because she was only about 19 years old when she met him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that was not at St. Hill. That was before, like obviously in the 50s, because they're
Yeah,
kids.
yes. Yeah, it was before what? Diana was born in London and Quentin was born in Phoenix. So, okay. Yeah.
That one other question people ask all the time, Mary Sue, she looks like she has red hair like Ron, like Hubbard. Is that true, or what was her hair color?
No, she actually was more of a mousy blonde.
Uh-huh.
And she curled it all herself. Every time she washed it, she would curl it all up, and anytime she tried to change the hairstyle, Ron was like, no, he liked the way she had it with her curls.
Okay.
And her bangs were even curled, and she would always have this habit of trying to push her bangs up out of her eyes.
Did she have like natural curls, like that would curl automatically, or no?
I don't think so, because she always curled it.
Okay.
And you could, and if she hadn't washed it for a few days, the curls would get longer, but not as tight as when she washed her hair.
And one last question. She's from Texas. Did she have a Texas accent?
I don't remember there being a Texas accent. I'm sure she could put it on, but she really didn't speak with it.
Okay, great. All right, next picture.
And this is Ron showing the kids the e-meter and how it works. This was in his office. That's Arthur on the desk and Suzette next to him. And then on Ron's right is Diana and then Quentin.
Okay.
And then that's the 4 kids at the swimming pool. And that is Ron, and the right side is Mary Sue, and in the middle is Katie Gillespie, and that was Ron's daughter from his first marriage to Polly.
Okay.
And she became a Class 6 auditor and was auditing in the field in Los Angeles.
And her brother was L. Ron Hubbard Jr., who was known as Nibs, right?
Yes, correct. And
Yeah,
Katie had 2 kids herself, Lance and Maud, but they never came to the ship. I don't remember them ever meeting their grandfather.
Okay. And of course, Nibs, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., he was long gone before you came to St. Hill, right?
Yeah, he was gone, I think, in
59. Yeah.
He was gone in 59, and I didn't get to St. Hill till 66.
Yeah. And then for those who might be familiar with it, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., he sued Scientology and Hubbard or whatever back in the 80s because they thought Hubbard was missing and he wanted him produced and all that stuff. And he became quite a critic of L. Ron Hubbard, and he thought, that Miscavige and Norman Starkey and all them had him in hiding and all that. And Scientology actually had won the suit. They got a judge to declare that Hubbard was still alive and that L. Ron Hubbard Jr. had no right to anything. So that's what happened with him.
Yeah, he was trying to take everything over.
Yeah. Do you know if Katie is still alive?
No, she passed away.
Okay.
And that's just a picture I threw in there of Ron. And that was at a party.
Okay.
And they did have parties at St. Hill, and Ron went to those, and even on the ship he'd go to the different parties.
Right.
And there is Mary Sue with the children, and this is in the winter garden. This was right next to Ron's office. And as kids, we used to play in there. There was marble around the outside. You can see the white with the black diamonds in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to, us as kids, we used to sit there and play jacks or knuckle bones or cards and that type of thing. And sometimes our jacks would go down into the grate because there was heating pipes around the edge covered with grates.
Uh-huh.
And we used to drop our jacks down there sometimes. And Ron would come in and see us trying to lift the grates up to get him. So he would come over and help us lift the grates. And that's Mary Sue out in the yard with Arthur.
Okay.
There's another picture. I don't think I included here of the kids sitting there learning with the tutor.
Okay.
And this was at St. Hill during a lecture in the chapel.
So tell everybody, like, about Hubbard. Hubbard gave all of his briefing course lectures in St. Hill, right? I mean, every day he would lecture. How did that work?
Yeah, during the briefing course back in 1962, when my parents were actually there, he would go and do his lectures in the chapel, and all the students were there on the briefing course. And it was later called the wall of tapes because there was just a wall of tapes from all his different lectures that he was doing.
Yeah, and just so people know, that basically made up the briefing course, and the briefing course was to make you a Class 6 auditor or processor. Like, it was to make you the most advanced person. And so every day, or however often, he would do like a 90-minute lecture. And years later, those lectures were still available, and that was some of the things that we had to produce at Golden Era Productions, Golden Era Studios at Gillham Hot Springs, because they would make people buy the lectures so that they would have them for the courses and stuff. And so they all had to be remixed because the audio quality wasn't as good as as it is today, and packaged and sold. So that's what happened with those lectures. He gave a ton of lectures.
Well, even before Golden Era, when we were in La Quinta, Ron was working on a whole project at that time, going through all the tapes and editing out any different noises here and there and that type of thing. And I know later on at Gold, after he had passed away, they were editing out any mention of Mary Sue, any mention of the children. It was as if there was no family there, and it just they just disappeared.
Right.
And there he is at his desk.
That's his desk in St. Hill?
I believe so.
Okay.
And this one is in the chapel at St. Hill, and that's Jane Kember there in the blue sweater. And the one on the left, that's my mother.
With her back
to the camera. Yeah, and this was 1962. They were twins on the briefing course.
And Jane Kember eventually became the head of the Guardian's office, correct?
Yes, she became the head of the Guardian's office, and she also went to prison when Mary Sue went to prison for everything that the FBI found during the raid in 1977.
That's right. And what is Hubbard there? Is he drilling them, or he's observing them doing?
It looks like he's observing them doing training drills.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Training routines for the communication. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then this picture here was taken outside on that road I showed you in front of the manor. Ron would get up and just walk around St. Hill, and students would come out and just swarm around him and talk to him. And on the left in the back there, the gentleman with the glasses, that's my dad back in 1962.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember as a kid, Suzette and I, we used to play in what I called the fairy forest. It was just a whole bunch of trees, like a forest around the outskirts of St. Hills between the manor and the road. And we used to play back there. And one day we came across a big rock and we started trying to dig it up. And then we were like, oh, we must have found a Roman wall or something. Anyway, one day we dragged Ron up there to show him our big discovery. And he said, it's just a bunch of rocks. But we're like, oh, we found something. And then another time, there was something in the sky and people were like, oh, maybe it's aliens. And he goes, no, it's probably a weather balloon.
Okay, great. So a couple of questions in the chat. One is that David Gaiman in the picture?
On the right, that's Herbie Parkhouse.
Okay, and then also somebody asked, is Kevin Kember front right?
Front right. No.
No. Okay.
I don't remember Kevin having hair.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next slide.
All right, so this is
this is the front view of the same thing, right?
Yeah, this is front view of the exact same crowd. And you know, if you look kind of towards the middle, there's a gentleman there with his hair combed over to his right. But there's Hubbard, and then a gentleman in blue, a lady, and then that head there. That is Herbie Parkhouse. And after he got declared, when Scientology issued this photograph, they had him removed. But anyway, my dad is behind Ron's shoulder on the left, well, on our right, Ron's left.
Yeah.
And then in the front, those two children there, that's Suzette Hubbard with the red hair on a bicycle.
Yeah.
And the little boy pushing her is my brother, who was 9 years old at the time.
That's great.
Yeah.
What's this?
Yeah, he had a whole garden at St. Hill in a glass house. And this was him testing reactions of a tomato on the e-meter. And I don't know what the results were. I know he mentions it in one of the tapes or something, but anyway, that was him doing that.
All right. And this one here?
Here, this is Diana leading Suzette with Arthur watching. This was just a photo. I don't know the circumstances, but it was just a photo just to show the kids kind of growing up there at St. Hill.
Do you remember the pony's name?
That was before I was there.
Oh, okay.
Just before, I think.
Is that Arthur on the right?
Yes, that's Arthur on the right.
Okay.
I remember, Arthur had a horse called Tiffy, and Suzette had one Midnight Blue, and then Quentin's was Jet, and I don't remember the name of Diana's horse.
Okay.
And there's Ron playing the organs.
Did he have a music room, or what did he have?
What was that?
Did he have a music room separate from his office, or what did he have at St. Hill?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember there being a music room. I remember him having a chemistry room. Mm-hmm. He used to do chemistry, and I remember that because that was up the stairs from the foyer when you go in the door of St. Hill. It was up the stairs and a secret little door. Quentin used to open it up and we'd go in there and wow, look at all this,
Well, I realize you were 10 years old or whatever, but do you know what kind of chemistry he was doing?
No idea. That was way above my head. But he used to play the organs on the opening of his Ron's journals, the RJs.
Okay. Did he ever on the flagship Apollo, did he ever have like a piano or organ or anything he could play?
No, I remember Norman Starkey coming in once with a little ukulele. Uh-huh. And Hubbard sitting at his desk playing the ukulele and singing some little song. And then another time where he sat on the drums and was pretending to play the drums.
Okay.
Now here, when I was at St. Hill, I remember hearing Diana wasn't there that day because she had been selected from her school to present flowers to Princess Margaret.
And Princess Margaret of the British royal family, right?
Of the British royal family. And that's Diana there on the right, having given Princess Margaret the flowers.
Okay. And
Diana went to a school of which had a lot of dance in it. She was an incredible ballerina, at least from the view of a 10-year-old.
And then eventually she learned to play the piano. She was a pianist too.
Yeah, on the ship she even had a piano that I remember Ken Urquhart used to play it because Ken was a great piano player. And Amanda Ambrose, whenever she came to the ship, she would play the piano, Diana's piano.
Okay. Next one.
And this Ron liked to get out and practice his photography, and this is just a photo of him at the grounds, taking, doing his photo shoots. That was kind of like his favorite hobby. Even on the ship, his hobby was to go out and take photos.
Okay.
And that's Mary Sue working at St. Hill.
Okay. And so you're telling me that curly hair, she curled that all herself. That wasn't a natural curl.
Yeah. Well, that was the 1950s hairstyle, and she kept it all those years.
Yeah. Okay. Next one.
Go ahead.
All right.
All right. Now, this is the side of the castle. Ron wanted to build more expansion space because he was running out of room for courses with students coming in. We'd had the ban in Australia in 1965. So in 1966 started a flood of Australians coming over to St. Hill. My parents alone sent over 100 families from Melbourne. And that doesn't count, Rinda's family who came around the same time from Adelaide, and other people there. St. Hill just started booming with all the Aussies showing up. And then there were Americans showing up, and London was doing well, and people coming down from there. So he needed to build something to accommodate all these students. The chapel, pavilion, and the other areas just weren't enough. You could walk around St. Hill and you hear, stand up. Oh, stand up in that chair. Thank you. Sit down in that chair. And this was the students doing drills, and they were up at the tennis courts. They were up in my little fairy forest woods doing TRs. Wherever they could find a space, they were doing it. So when Ron tried to get approval to build some expansion space, it was not approved. And they found a law that any man can build a castle on his land.
An old English law, right?
An old English law. So Captain Bill actually was staff at St. Hill at that time, and he was a trained architect. So Captain Bill worked out the architect for the castle and got that whole project going, and before he went into the sea project in 67.
And it took years to build, right? They built it section by section. I don't even think it didn't get finished until I was in the sea organization.
Yeah. Well, in 67, when I was there, it was just one side of the castle had been done, or was actually still being worked on.
Yeah.
And then this is just the road from the castle. This is students on student break, walking down to the canteen, which was the big hangout for all the students and the PCs between sessions. It was always packed there. And that was run by Herbie Parkhouse and David Gaiman, making profit off of all the students.
And I want to comment to everybody here, okay? This is not current times. This is not a bunch of hippies in the 60s and 70s. You notice these are our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. They're all suit and tie and dressed up and when they're on course.
And the women all had their hair done in those days.
Yeah, these weren't like teenagers. These were actual, middle-aged, 30s, 40-year-olds, that were doing this stuff. So it shows you, how big the reach was in that time for Scientology and its services.
And here's a picture to put in perspective the size of what the castle ended up being, because in the front right is the manor.
Yeah.
And then you can see they put in the road going up there, and you can see down in between the castle and the manor is the old buildings that, where the chapel was, and the pavilion and the swimming pool in the middle there.
Now the chapel's where he gave his lectures, right? Because the castle wasn't there. Yeah, the
chapel's where he gave his lectures, and John McMaster's, the first clear, was the chaplain, and he used to do Sunday service there. And various different events would all happen in the chapel. It was a happening place in the chapel.
Yeah. Okay. So that gives you an idea of the size of how big it got there.
Right. Well, and this was New Year's 1967. there's Ron at the party for the New Year's, 66 to 67. On the right is my dad, and on the left is my mom in the fur.
Okay.
And there's Ron packing. I assume that was in Rhodesia, or
Yeah.
but it was around that time he ended up in Rhodesia in 67.
Can you tell the story about why he went down to Rhodesia? What was the reason for that?
Well, he was having trouble with immigration, I believe, in England, and he went down to Rhodesia, was going to check that out. And then while he was in Rhodesia, he did his usual thing of trying to get involved in the government, and he ended up getting kicked out of Rhodesia and coming back to England. And as a kid, I remember hearing everyone excited, Ron's coming back. And they piled everyone in the buses and they drove up to Heathrow in buses in order to have a big crowd up there for when he got off the plane.
I think we have pictures of that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is him with the crowd around him. It was to make a big deal of him coming back. No one knew that he'd been kicked out of Rhodesia. That was kept hush hush. Yeah, and that's him getting off. He'd just gotten off the plane, waving at everybody, and I was there. We're all there waving and screaming and welcoming him back.
And that's to a hero's welcome.
On leaving customs at London Airport, Ron was greeted by a surprise welcoming crowd of 800 smiling and applauding Scientologists from St. Hill in London.
Meanwhile, he came back and basically in disgrace because they were kicking him out of the country in Rhodesia, which eventually was renamed Zimbabwe. It's now called Zimbabwe. But he was. It was basically a front coming back here to make him feel good.
Right, but none of those 800 people had a clue.
Right.
And this is to show you. This is outside the chapel. So there must be a wedding or Ron is lecturing in the chapel, and here's the crowd at the windows trying to hear. And there's the little wishing well as kids. Quentin used to climb in there and roll up his pants and climb in there and scoop out the money, and we'd all go to the canteen.
Hold on. Just let my dog out.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so that was our canteen pocket money. Was the students would throw their money into the wishing well, and Quentin would climb in and get it out.
And that's the wishing well there too, right?
Yeah, that's the same. That's the same location that all those people were crowded around.
Got it.
And then here is, yes, there is Kevin Kimber right there. He was the supervisor, up standing there on the left.
Okay. And what are they doing there? They're actually drilling. That's an E-meter in front of two students, right?
Yes, and there's a doll there because they're practicing on the doll, which is how the training routine was done, or the E-meter drills.
And the reason that was done was you basically, even though there was a student sitting behind the doll, you were supposed to, as the auditor on the other side, focus your attention on the doll so that you wouldn't re-stimulate the student sitting across from you based on what you were saying to them in terms of commands. So that's what the dolls were. They would use dolls, they'd use stuffed animals, that type of thing.
Right.
Okay, next one.
Okay, and this is the first section of the castle that was built back in 67. Going up that hill and then going in the first door on the left was where the Dynetics course was, where I spent many hours on that course in there.
Okay. All right, and here's the next set of slides.
Okay. Now here is a picture of us at our home in England. My mom was on the Sea Project. We rented out a downstairs room to Flo Barnett. And this is a picture of my brother and sister on the bottom, and then me in blue, and then Clarice Barnett on top of me. Clarice is Shelley Barnett, Shelley Miscavige's older sister. So Flo, her mother, and Clarice were staying with us in 1967. Both Clarice and I would have been 10 years old there, or 10 or 11. She was probably 10 and I was 11 by
so
that
then
point.
Shelley was probably 8 or 9 then.
Yeah, and she was back in Texas with the younger sister, with the dad, with Bonnie.
Do you remember, did Shelley ever come over to stay with you guys in England or no?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Oh, and this was to show a clay demo.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I put that in here, because as part of your courses, to show that you have, as part of your training, to show you have understanding, you had to use a clay demo, plasticine or in England or clay in America, and you had to do these little figures and demonstrate it all out with little labels, your understanding of what you've read.
Right, and it basically was part of the student hat or the student training to do this, because LRH believed that by demonstrating it in clay, it actually cemented almost that concept, or made whatever it was you were studying, that concept, stick to your brain basically, so that you would remember it.
Right. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, and this is just when someone completed an auditing level or a training level, they were taken around to the different course rooms and announced. And it's like, can I have your attention, please? Joe Blow has just completed the state of clear, or just gained the state of clear. And everyone would clap, and then that person would give their success story. And in the middle of this picture, the woman in the black sweater in the very front, many would know her as Jill Steinberg. She was an auditor at the Flagland base, and she later married Leon Steinberg.
Okay.
And this is just now, instead of a doll, they were practicing their e-metering on a teddy bear.
All right.
This here is Ira Shaloff on the left and Candy on the right, and Eunice Ford in the middle. Eunice Ford had been around since the early 50s. She was in LA when Hubbard was in Los Angeles, before he even got St. Hill. And Ira, I visited him just this year. He's in Virginia. And I remember him when he was married to Candy, because Candy was my tutor on the ship. In 1968, when I first came aboard, she came on, and her first assignment was to be our tutor.
Okay.
And then this picture here is another one of the students coming down on the student break, but the woman on the front right in the white
dress.
Yes, that is Flo Barnett. That's Shelley and Clarice's mom.
Yeah. So she'd been to Scientology for a long, long time.
Yeah, at least in 67 she was in, because that's when this was taken.
Right. And then she, of course, years later, I mean, I don't know, she died or was killed, right, by a gunshot.
It said that she committed suicide with a rifle, and I've heard different stories that it really couldn't be suicide if there's 3 bullets.
Yeah.
I've just not gone there. So one day maybe we'll find out the truth.
Exactly.
And there is Suzette on the left, Hubbard, Diana, and then Arthur, and then Quentin on the right.
I got to say, that picture and the way they're dressed is almost like a perfect example of their personalities as I remember them. Suzette's kind of like mod and cool and fun and loose, right? Diana's very prim and proper and standing up straight. Arthur's very funny and,
mischievous.
And then Quentin is very studious, with his airplanes and that sort of thing. And that's kind of how they were in real life, right?
Yeah. But this picture is funny because I never remember Quentin being that small in comparison to Suzette, because he's older than Suzette.
Oh, wow.
But somehow this picture has always made him look so much smaller than her.
And she's not wearing heels. She's wearing like go-go boots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
And then there's in the front right, there's Iris Shalov, who I pointed out in the earlier picture, who I just recently visited.
Okay.
And then this is, I believe it's James Byrne who is leaving. He's kind of right in the middle there. James Byrne, many ex-Sea Org members and Sea Org members would remember James. He was on mission with me at the Free Winds. He did a lot of missions at Gold. He did the mission there right after the flood. He was at the Advanced Org in Los Angeles, but he was there from South Africa, and he was my grades auditor when I was 10 years old. He had a room in East Grinstead in the attic of a lady's house. And I would show up at St. Hill for my auditing, and he would drive me to his little attic room and set up and give me a session, and then drive me back to St. Hill to go to the examiner.
Okay.
And there is John McMasters is the one on the left doing a E-meter drill.
Do you know
John
who that
McMasters is known as the first clear.
Right. Now, that's one thing I wanted to talk about is that at St. Hill, Hubbard, that's when he did his research into coming up with the clearing course and the early OT levels, not OT3, because that was later when he was in the Sea Org, right?
Right. Yeah, he did. This is where people were doing, they did the grades, and then they got audited on 5 and 5A power, and they'd walk around with these little badges saying, please do not ask me any questions about my case. I'm on power processing. So you weren't allowed to even say, how are you doing? Because that would be about their case. And then after grade 5 and 5A, then the step was solo auditing, and then you audited on grade 6, which was referred to as R6EW.
Right.
And then you did the clearing course. And then Ron came up with OT1, 2, and then 3, which is where everyone talks about Xenu.
Right. And that was in Ron's Journal 67, right? That was when he discovered the wall of fire, and that's in that famous lecture, right?
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. The wall of fire is what OT3 was referred to as.
Yeah. But that's where Hubbard was doing his research into the clearing, how to make a clear and that type of thing. And John McMaster.
Yes.
Yeah, he was designated the first clear. Now he's no longer alive or anything like that, but
no.
Anyway.
And he was South African.
Yeah.
And this is the children's Dianetic course. And the little girl in the middle in the white, that's me.
That's you?
That's me. And then sitting across from me is Jennifer Powell, who is the younger sister of Marion Powell, Marion Dendu.
Uh-huh.
Jennifer was my best friend since we were 3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'd known Marion since I was 3. And then to my right is my brother. And then
tie?
Yeah, with the tie on.
Yeah.
And then to my left is Ann Beats, who was also from Australia, and across from her is my sister with her back to the camera.
And you had like a little children's course room or whatever?
Yeah, it was a children's course room for us to learn Dianetics.
Okay.
And then this is the adult course room. And I put this one in here because you've seen the other ones with the E-meter drills. But now that they've graduated from talking to teddy bears and dolls, they're now doing drills with each other. And the lady there with the short hair, from the left, second one in, that's Nikki Freeman, who became Mary Sue's communicator. Nikki joined the Sea Org in '67. She was from Las Vegas. and in 68 became Mary Sue's communicator after being the mimeotypist for a few months. And then she was Mary Sue's communicator through all the years, through the ship, through the time in the U.S. And then when Mary Sue had to leave La Quinta because of the FBI raid, Nikki was with her in Los Angeles. She was
Nikki,
like her best friend.
Now you said Nikki Friedman, that was her name, and she's from Las Vegas. Was she married to Frankie Friedman?
Yeah, she was married to Frankie.
I remember Frankie very well. Yeah.
Yeah. And later on, she even married, I think she married Dave Engelhardt for a short period.
Yeah.
And then she was married to Rick Merwin.
Wow.
And yeah.
Yeah, the Sea Organization women and men, they get around. The marriages didn't necessarily last too long, did they?
Well, some people did. I mean,
no, I'm joking. I'm joking.
41 years, but
no, I'm joking.
There are some who did go through husbands fast.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out from this photograph, you see how everybody's shoulder to shoulder? That's how it was back when I was in Scientology in the 1970s and started out. When you were on course, there was no room to be had. Literally, you were shoulder to shoulder and across from people trying to read and study and do your drills. That's how packed things were then.
Yeah.
There were tons of people doing this stuff.
It actually, there were so many students there that people in East Grinstead rented out rooms, or, but families would come in, there's nowhere to stay, and they'd end up having to go to other counties. Well, there was a hotel there called the Apsley Arms. And that was famous among all these students, and at nighttime they'd be partying, having a good old time. Well, a Texas millionaire came in, Elmo Troop, and Elmo ended up buying the Apsley Arms, and he had a manager who he felt was ripping him off. Uh-huh. So he hired my dad as an accountant to go through all the books. And Dad found where the ripoffs were occurring and told Elmo, and Elmo was like, well, Peter, can you please get the keys and take over management of the hotel for me? Now, Elmo wasn't a person that would do that himself. Not only was he a millionaire, but he'd been struck by lightning, so he shook. And that's why he was in Scientology he wanted to get that shaking from the lightning audited out.
Wow.
But anyway, so my dad went to the Apsley Arms to get the keys and take them away from the existing manager, and ended up, the guy wouldn't turn over the keys. And my dad, having been a judo instructor, ends up putting the guy in a headlock and pulling his head in so hard he broke his own ribs.
Oh my God.
But he did get the keys. And then he comes home and he's like miserable because his ribs are broken. He's like, I'm going to bed, kids. And we didn't even know what had happened.
Yeah.
The next morning, we go out to play and we see footprints in the snow going over to our car. And we look over at the car, and there's this big crowbar that had been thrown through the back of our car, and all the tires had been slashed.
Oh.
Well, what we found out later is when my brother and I and my sister got to the ship, and my brother was in the engine room, one of the engineers says, "Oh, you're Peter Gillham?" Because my brother had the same name as my dad.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, you must be talking about my dad." And the guy says, "I was part of the London Underground and was hired to come and slash the tires on your family car." And I threw the crowbar through the window, and it was hired by this guy that had been the manager that Dad got in the fight with.
Wow.
That's how small that world is.
Yeah.
And then here, someone a few videos ago had asked about Owen Starkey. Standing there in the middle in the white shirt and the black tie is a young Owen Starkey. And that is the brother of Norman Starkey, who many will know of him as the trustee of L. Ron Hubbard's estate.
Okay. And then Colonel Brock is in the chat room, and he's asked about Sven Peterson on several videos. Why don't you tell him what you're doing?
Oh, I'd actually told him the last video that I would get him a picture of Sven, but I'm sorry, I just haven't had time trying to put this together and other stuff together. But in the next few, just keep watching. I'll come up with a picture of Sven. And
Okay, great.
actually, while I'm on it, anyone who's watching, if you have any old pictures of St. Hill or the ship or sea or whatever, I would really appreciate it if you could send me copies or send them to me, because I've got a big collection,
Yeah.
and I'd like to kind of keep them alive rather than see them go in the trash.
And they can email them to you at janisgilhamgrady@gmail.com, correct?
Yes, they can. Janis Gillham, which has two L's, Grady at gmail.com.
Fantastic. Okay. And here's the next one.
And that's Quentin just showing as a kid, he still had his love of airplanes the same as he did later on in life.
Yeah,
As
and
I
then the
mentioned,
stories
he
where
would
he
run
got
down the
older.
hallway.
Yeah, I was just going to say that he would go down the hallway. He became a highly trained auditor, and he'd take his the people he was processing and fly them down the hallway.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why I put this one in.
It's just
But
two students practicing
yeah,
auditing.
it's just two students. Yeah. And again, here's this is the org executive course. These were staff members doing administrative training.
Okay.
And then some people will remember these guys here. On the left is Rebecca Jessup. She recently passed away a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And giving her a hug is Christopher Spear.
Oh, wow.
Chris was on the ship as an auditor. And then in the middle there is Leslie Blundell. I grew up with Leslie's youngest sister, and her mom actually ended up at Celebrity Center with my mother. They'd known each other, since the 50s in Australia.
Uh-huh.
And these were just this was the new flow of students coming in, the younger students coming in after the 30s that you'd seen. And next week's will show some of the older, well-dressed 1950s women with their hair all glammed up. And this is just to show the younger group, the difference coming in.
Okay. It's a great photograph, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I love this photo. And then this was when my mom came back to St. Hill. She'd been on the Sea Project, and she came back in order to arrange with our dad to get us kids packed up and sent to her in the Sea Org. So there's my mom in the middle there, my sister on the left of the photo, me in the little orange skirt. I made that. And then my friend Linda Nash. We knew each other in Australia and in England. She was one of the 100 families that came over.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the end of the slideshow about St. Hill, but we've got, we did an interview with, by the way, if you have any questions, go ahead in the live chat. We're going to get to the questions we've already started. And then if you've got more, go ahead. We'll answer any questions that you've got. But we did an interview with Ken Urquhart, who used to be L. Ron Hubbard's butler at St. Hill and then became his personal communicator. And we talked more about St. Hill and his time working for L. Ron Hubbard in those days. And also, where Hubbard went off the rails, because he definitely did at certain points. So anyway, so that's going to be coming up, and we'll be showing that video. And while you guys go ahead, Janice, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to say Ken's whole attitude towards Ron was his friend at St. Hill. And then in the Sea Org, Ron became a monster. And
Right.
He didn't recognize that personality at all. So we kind of discussed when that change occurred, and we've got more interviews to do with him.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, he was the one who wrote and, the creation of the Rehabilitation Project Force, the RPF on the Apollo. He's the one who wrote the flag order, and we're going to discuss that with him in depth. in terms of what was the plan for the RPF and what it turned into. So you're going to want to hear that information. That's information you won't get anywhere else, and we'll be interviewing Ken about that as well. Anyway, people, go ahead, get in there and ask any questions. If you want to super chat us, super sticker us, go ahead. We appreciate it. And then meanwhile, while you guys are putting in your questions, Janis wants to tell you about, this is her other business she wants to tell you about, Janis. So why don't you go ahead and tell people what this is?
I started, back when the mortgage industry was crashing in 2008 and 9, I was like, I got to get out of this and do something else. So I started Outback Naturals, which was supplements. And I started selling my dad's product, Natural Calm and CalMag. And then I decided that I would do my own brand rather than sell that, because my dad, by that time, had sold his Natural Calm, Natural Vitality brand, which is now owned by Clorox. So I developed, with my dad and Paul, my own products. You can go to the next one.
Okay, one sec here. Okay.
Okay, and mine is called Koala Calm. And I have plain and I have apple cinnamon flavor for the calm. And this calm is actually 400 milligrams rather than 325, which is what the other calm had. And this also is made so it's less likely to cause diarrhea like some people have with the other calm.
Now, who designed that packaging? I love the koala bear on that. Who did that for you?
Jeff Hawkins did that label for me, and he did the logo.
Yeah.
But my son did the little Aboriginal type artwork.
Okay. And then how did you formulate? How did you formulate your own koala calm? Did Paul help you with that? Your husband, or how did that come about?
Yeah, and my dad, who he's 40-year top expert in the subject of magnesium in the world at one point. So the three of us sat down and worked it all out. And how are we going to get an even better product? And that's where we came up with this one.
Okay. And then there's this one.
And then this is the original formula for CalMag, instant CalMag, with 200 magnesium, 200 calcium. And this flavor is raspberry lemon.
Okay.
And then this is Humates. It's some people know a lot about it. Some people have never even heard about it. But it's minerals that are from the ground, from plants that died thousands and thousands of years ago, and they have trace minerals in them. And this has been very successful with gut health, and is also antiviral. And I've got to be careful on the things I say, but I've had a lot of success with this item. It's actually become my #1 selling product.
Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah.
Now, how can people...
Go ahead.
And I'm actually, tomorrow, should be going into production on a joint formula. I know a lot of my friends out there are probably starting to have joint issues. And this formula has already shown that I've given it to friends and they're like coming back for more because it's helped with their joint pains.
Fabulous. Now, how can people order this if they're interested in getting Outback Naturals or getting the Koala Calm and all that?
Well, they can just go to my website, www.outbacknaturals.com.
Okay.
And they can order from there. We also sell those products on Amazon and eBay.
Fabulous. Fabulous, Janis. Okay, everybody. So we're going to go to your questions now. And anyway, if you've got any more, Janis, I've got a bunch started. I'm going to pull them up. But if you would look at the live chat, if there's any new ones that come up, go ahead and start them. But I'm just going to go ahead and start these ones that have already been started. 1 second here. All right. First one here is from Colonel Brock. Where's the best place to buy your books, preferably autographed?
Autographed, you have to email me at JanisGilhamGrady@gmail.com. I have some here and I can sign them personalize them, whatever, and send them to you. Otherwise, if you don't want my autograph, you can buy them on Amazon.
Okay, great. Next question, Colonel Brock. Was Ron political? Which party?
He never voted.
I know he didn't like the government. They, they
No,
were
he
always
hated,
after
he
him.
hated the
The
government.
IRS was after him, and the governments didn't want him in their countries and all that. So,
yeah, I think though he would tend more towards Republican because of Ronald Reagan.
okay. Well, and also personal responsibility is a big part of being part of Scientology. In other words, you're responsible for your own condition. You're responsible for taking care of yourself, and you shouldn't have to rely on, outside assistance, that type of thing. And he did not like the welfare state. So, he probably was more conservative in that regard. Thanks for your question, Colonel Brock. Next one is from ex-Scientology. Was Janis good friends with LRH's children? Did they play together often?
Well, I think I covered that going through those pictures. Yes, we played together often. I would, after, when my mother first came back from St. Hill in 1962, she had met all the kids. So she then had us pen pal with them. So from 1962 to 1966, we always wrote back and forth. And then we actually got to meet them in 1966 and became friends. We'd go hang out at St. Hill. I got all Suzette's hand-me-down clothes. When the boys were trying to chase Diana, Suzette, Terry, and I were her bodyguards or her lookouts and tell her, you can go here, the boys aren't there, to get her away from them. And we used to sit on rainy days, we'd go to Quentin's room and he had a game of Risk, which was, conquering the world. And we would play that, or we'd go to the Winter Garden next to Ron's office and we'd sit there and play jacks and knuckles or card games.
Okay, that's my dog, sorry. All right, next question. Colonel Brock, was LRH generally fun to be around? Hold on.
Well, I wouldn't say fun. I mean, yeah, there were times he was fun to be around. Times that, as a messenger, I was around him, working. And he'd tell jokes and talk, and he could talk for hours just telling different stories. And there's just different things. So yes, he could be fun to be around and he could be terrible to be around. Mixed bag.
Okay, thanks very much, Colonel Brock. Here's the next question. Vegan 3, did you know Amanda's son? You're probably talking about Amanda Ambrose.
Yes, Tony Strong. I talked about him a couple of weeks ago, where he had been found to have been molesting one of the messengers while she was sleeping. She woke up and there he was molesting her, and he was immediately kicked off the ship. And he later married a woman and was caught molesting his stepchildren and did prison. And he got released from prison, having done his time, and had trouble on probation and ended up going back to prison where he died several years ago. He passed away.
Okay. Next question here. Mary Sue Hubbard. Oh, welcome back. We're happy to see you here. Did you know Maureen Brigatti at St. Hill?
That name, I'm pretty sure I knew Maureen at Gold in the exec strata, if I'm thinking of the right person.
Yeah, I recognize the name too. I just don't remember any interaction, but I definitely remember the name.
Yeah, I think she was like field exec int or something.
Yeah. Okay, next question here. Ex-Scientology. Did David Miscavige during the golden age of tech change or correct the St. Hill Special Briefing Course tapes? We weren't there during the golden age of text, but like Janis said, lots of stuff was edited out. So who knows,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Miscavige changed a lot of things in the golden age of tech. We weren't there, but we heard about it. We got briefed on it in terms of, what was being done. But the biggest thing was he changed a lot of the reads that auditors or processors would make on the e-meter, where the definition of a floating needle got changed to something really ridiculous. And it basically slowed down and suppressed people in terms of getting their auditing done. But I'm sure now, apparently, I saw a comment in here too that the briefing course isn't even around anymore. They don't even promote it or anything.
Yeah, I don't even know what the ASHOs, the advanced, the American St. Hill organizations, do anymore, since they don't deliver 5 and 5A, and there's no St. Hill special briefing course.
Yeah, because those were their main purpose, right, back in the day.
Yeah.
Okay, get your. We have more questions. We're going to answer them all. So you can super chat us if you want. You also can, if you want, super sticker us. Here's our next question here. This is from Frank Moreland. At our Scientology Stories Peeling the Onion, in the future, can you cover David Mayo being IC of tech to being a squirrel to independent Scientology? In other words, he was in charge of technical, and then he became a squirrel, and then he was independent Scientology.
Yeah, we will cover that in the near future.
Yeah. David Mayo was definitely a famous person in Scientology, and we'll definitely go through that. I was around when he got kicked out, and so were you, Janis. And matter of fact, you were on the running program, or running around with him, right?
No, he was after me.
I
was the first, okay. And then David was assigned after I'd finished. But he's the one that gave me the original instructions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Frank. All right, next question we got here is right here. Sorry, Jenny Fernandez. When was Jeffrey Filbert at St. Hill? Do you know that?
I don't know him.
Okay, sorry about that, Jenny. I don't know who that is either. I'm sorry. Next question is from Irma Webb. Question: is the state of natural clear still a state in Scientology? It was when we left. I don't know about, we've been gone 30 years. I don't know if they've changed that or not. What about you, Janis? Have you heard anything about that?
Same information as you.
Yeah. And it changed, when he discovered New Era Dianetics. That's when the state of Dianetic clear and natural clear started around, I think it was around 1979. Because I didn't even do the clearing course. I was declared a Dianetic clear. And so that's how I got onto my OT levels at that time.
I did the clearing course. I went all the way up the old bridge.
Yeah. I did the old OT1 and OT2 and the OT3. I did all that stuff, but I skipped over, like I didn't have to do the power processing or R6EW or the clearing course, because if you were declared Dianetic clear or natural clear, you just jumped all the way up to OT1. You never had to do it. Thanks for your question, Irma. Next question here is from Vegan3. Did you know Kathy McCarthy? Not me. How about you, Janis?
Kathy McCarthy. Yeah, if it's the Kathy McCarthy I'm thinking of, she was the Commodore steward for a short period in 68, and then went over to the Avon River, and is married Kim Hawkins, Jeff's brother, I believe. If that's the same person we're talking about.
Okay. All right, we'll get to the next question here. One second here. Sorry, I'm in the wrong category here. That was Vegan 3. Okay, here we go. Next question from ex-Scientologist. What accents have you picked up, Janis?
Well, originally I had an Australian accent, and then I went to England, and they used to laugh at my accent. And then I went to the ship, and it was so multilingual on the ship that it became my own accent. And then I came to America, and people say, oh, you sound like you're from the Bronx, or you're from Boston, or you're from New York. And only very few will say, oh, are you Australian? And when I go to Australia, they call me a Yank.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I lived all over as a kid, and people, they can't tell what part of the country I'm from, but I went to high school in Virginia, so I don't have a Southern accent. But anyway, that's the deal on that. Thank you so much for your question on that one. Okay, hey, super chat. Thank you so much, Diane Jean Valasilo. Thank you. We appreciate the super chat. During an interview, Ron Miscavige mentioned a fallen tree everyone would sit on during lunch, 1967-ish. Do you know what area he's speaking about?
That was probably outside the castle.
In St. Hill, right?
Yeah, at St. Hill.
Yeah. Do you remember a tree that people would sit on and all that?
Yeah, well, there was a whole area. You come out it. I didn't go there. It was like always wet.
But you went out into the enchanted forest.
Yes, fairy forest is what I called it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Diane Jean. We really appreciate that super chat here. Let me go to the next question. Hold on. I got lost. 1 second here. Here we go. Colonel Brock. Did the Bobbies ever hassle you at St. Hill?
As in police?
Police.
No, while I was there, I don't remember having any problems with them.
Did you ever have any interaction with the police in East Grinstead or anything like that?
No, I didn't.
What was it
But
like?
that just reminded me, there was a place in East Grinstead, there was a coffee shop, and all the Americans used to go there for their morning coffee on their way to St. Hill or whatever, and it was called 40s. And when we got there in 66, I would see people coming out the doors. It was like so crowded, people trying to get coffee. And then one day I noted the place was empty. Well, apparently the owner had made some bad comment about the Scientologists. He was disconnected from, he was put on the declare list. No one was allowed to go in the 40s anymore.
Okay.
That was like, okay, this is disconnection. There's similar,
Okay, just what? Well, I just noticed too. Well, by the way, we've just welcomed in a whole bunch of new people watching. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask in the comment section. Also, if you want to super chat, if you want to super sticker us, we really appreciate it. And we'll go on to the next question. Okay. Bach Bundle question: did LRH ever visit the Celebrity Center after your mother set it up? Did he want to meet or capture any certain celebrity?
No. He never went to Celebrity Center. He would telex my mother sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And she would send him daily reports. Though she was in Los Angeles, if she had problems, and her main problem was usually the guardian's office. So she knew that if she sent a daily report up and addressed it to my sister or I, we would get it into him without anybody else getting on the communication line and stopping it. So that was a communication line she had to him, and he would answer her that way. But he never went to Celebrity Center. He never went to the Manor. He never went to 8th Street or La Brea. And he was never set on what celebrity you're going to get or anything like that. She would send up reports on who were on lines and who she was dealing with and that type of thing. But he never said, oh, you got to get Clint Eastwood in.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bach Bundle. Next question here. Love Fu Kitchen. Really looking forward to you doing more about Quentin. In fact, I'd love to know more about all Ron's kids, what their personalities were like, what they enjoyed. Often wonder about Diana still being in.
Okay, we'll have to do something like that.
Yeah. Who were you closest with?
Suzette. Suzette was my closest, and then Quentin. Quentin one time, we were on the ship, and I was on watch. I must have been about 16 at the time. And I was sitting there and watching. He would always come over and sit and chat with me. And he says, one of these days they're going to make me get married. And there's only 2 girls on this ship that I would marry. One would be Annie and one would be you.
How did you react to that?
I'm like, oh, okay.
There you go.
I'm
You
16. I'm not
could have
ready to get
inherited all
married.
that Hubbard fortune.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyways, thanks, Love Food Chicken. Yeah, we will definitely do a video on each of the different kids because they definitely had distinct personalities, and we'll talk about that then. Okay, next question. Ex-Scientologist. I used to go to Gillham's Nutrition Center in Los Angeles to get the magnesium and calcium and vitamins for the purification program at AOLA that I was in. I was in charge of for a while. And that's still your store, right, Janis?
Yeah, the store is still there. It's been made smaller because anyone in good standing is not allowed in there.
What's it like?
So,
Tell people what it's like because you're still near the Scientology
well,
complex.
yeah,
Right?
it's like a block away from the complex, and the complex is dead. There's nothing really happening. You might see it's slowly getting a little more active, but you see people down the road, several blocks at the birthing building, waiting for a bus to take them maybe 3 blocks. It's like, really? But they're standing there with masks on. They're still wearing masks, even among themselves.
Wow.
And yeah, the place looks pretty dead. Not a lot happening.
Okay.
And there's some great little stores in that area that are now up and coming. There's a couple of new restaurants that have opened up, and so hopefully, for the businesses, hopefully it'll come back to life.
Okay. Thank you so much for that question. Okay, next question. Love Food Kitchen. I love that the X community is so circular. Everyone helps everyone. The iconic Jeff of the Volcano Dynetics ads doing your packaging. Yeah, Jeff
Yeah,
is great. He's done actually a lot. Didn't he help you with the design of your book too, or no?
yeah, he did both those book covers,
Mm-hmm.
and he's done the cover for book 3.
And he did Mark Headley's Blown for Good book cover, and he did Amy Scobie's Abuse at the
Yeah,
Top book cover. And he's a wonderful, wonderful artist, and we're so glad to have him as a friend. He comes to see us here in Las Vegas, and we've done trips together and all that, so it's really great. Okay, thanks very much for that comment. Next question here is from Sander Braun. Question: do you concur with Russell Miller's versions of events and characterizations in his book Barefaced Messiah? Okay, I can comment on that because I'm actually rereading it right now. I'm about
okay,
halfway
good.
through it. Yeah, I read it after I left the Sea Organization, like in 1993 or 94, and it was eye-opening for me because it had in-depth accounts based on L. Ron Hubbard's own diaries and stuff that Jerry Armstrong had taken, and Russ gave them to Russell Miller, and he did in-depth investigation and reporting on L. Ron Hubbard, and wrote what I thought was a fantastic book about Hubbard. Yeah, he was involved in some crazy stuff that we never knew anything about, and I'm up to the part right now where he's with Jack Parsons and Black Magic in Pasadena and all that. We never knew anything about that. But I'm getting to the part again where, he's in the 50s and he starts Dynetics and Scientology. And to me, that book actually opened my eyes quite a bit. I started questioning a lot about L. Ron Hubbard at that time. I still believe in a lot of the auditing that I got because I'm not going to deny the positive changes that happened to me from that. And but yeah, no, Hubbard definitely had a checkered, dirty past. How about you, Janis? Have you read the book?
Yeah, I read the book probably 30 years ago
Yeah.
when it first came out. So I got to reread it to refresh. But I remember, and at that time, my onion hadn't started peeling. So yeah, my whole viewpoint would be very different now
Yeah.
if I read it again. So I do need to do that. But even reading it then, there's stuff I agreed with, stuff I didn't agree with, and that's why I need to go back and look at it because I was still a Scientologist
Yeah,
at
we
that
just
time.
left.
Yeah, yeah.
And even Paul, right, your husband, I mean, he still was red on white, green on white quite a bit, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he wouldn't read anything like that. He's like, "Why are you reading that?"
Yeah. Hey, thanks for the question, Sandra Braun. Next question here. Amy in Boston, have either of you gone to therapy since leaving? I have not. I've never felt the need to get any therapy.
No.
The best therapy, and I've heard this also on other channels too, has been talking to my fellow ex-Scientologists and ex-Sea Org members, comparing notes and hearing their stories and how they compared to mine. And that actually gave me a lot of clarity on different things. Plus the books that I've read, like Barefaced Messiah, like the other books, Blown for Good, everything. I've read just about every book that's come out since I left, and that's helped me. But I haven't felt the need for any kind of therapy. How about you, Janis?
Yeah, I haven't had any therapy. I enjoy talking about it, laughing about it, knowing how stupid different things were and still are, and I just get on with my life and keep looking forward rather than backwards. If I look backwards, I laugh about it. Okay, it happened. Let's go move on.
Yeah, and it's been kind of that way too since we left. I mean, we've had fair game, we've had private investigators, I had somebody pose as my friend for almost 10 years,
Yeah,
And when I found out, it was kind of jolting at the time, but then like you said, Janis, we kind of were grown up, and we learned when we were in Scientology to sort of let that roll off. You live in the moment, not in the past, and you
exactly.
create your own future. And so I've never really let that stuff sort of hold me back. I just keep moving forward. Thanks for the question, Amy in Boston. Next question is, I already did that one. Okay, sorry about that. Getting caught up here. Again, we thank you for the super chat. All right, question here. Love Sherlock. Mark, what did you think when you did OT3 and learned the Xenu story? You know what? I was a true believer at the time. It was confidential. A lot of people don't realize that. Now it's easy because you can find it on the internet and you can see it in videos and all that. But we weren't privy to it. If you were not clear and done the previous OT levels, it was confidential, and that kind of added a mystery sandwich to it, sort of, so that when you actually opened it up and read it, you were kind of like, wow, and I had no reason to disbelieve it at the time because I was a Scientologist and this was coming from L. Ron Hubbard and all that sort of thing. So I never questioned it then. Now, since leaving Scientology, I don't believe, again, from reading Barefaced Messiah, Hubbard was a storyteller and he told a lot of whoppers, and the Xenu stuff, yeah, I don't believe that. But, I think Hubbard believed it, and that's how it was when I read it. How about you, Janis?
Yeah, well, when I did it, I knew nothing else, so I just okay. Oh, all right, that's what happened. Okay.
Yeah, same with me. Hey, listen, and I'm not criticizing other religions and all that, but there's a lot of things that are based on faith in Christianity and Buddhism and many different religions and all that based on faith. Is there empirical evidence? No, but people believe it, and that's kind of how we were. We were diehard Scientologists.
Exactly. I believed it. I followed it. I did the auditing, the e-meter read. I did the processing, and I just kept doing it.
Yeah.
And it didn't harm me. Maybe some people think it affected me, but and they think I'm weird, but that's okay. I am who I am.
Exactly.
And you're stuck with it.
That's right. Hey, thank you for the question, Love Sherlock. Next question. Here we go. Heidi Hooper. I wonder if the versions of his lectures where they cut out any references to Mary Sue and the kids are still around, that people could hear them. People who may have bought the old cassette lectures and still may have them, they still may exist.
There are collectors out there who have collected original reel-to-reel tapes that someone, some of the old timers might have, and when they're dying, the collectors will try and get them. Some go in the trash, but I'm sure there's some out there that have never been edited.
Yeah, and just as an aside, I was there at the international base in the early 1980s when we were remixing all of L. Ron Hubbard's lectures, and part of the project, because they were recorded on old recorders back in the 50s and 60s and all that, we actually had to find the original recording devices, the tape recorders, not the ones that were actually used, but the similar model, so that we could use them to mix the tapes and get rid of any noises or anything like that. And that actually became the basis of what was then called Clear Sound. And I ran the project that actually rounded up all those recorders. Some of them were recorded on paper tape. That's how old the lectures were. And we had to get the original machines in order to be able to master them and mix them and that type of thing. So a lot of time and effort went into that. Anyway, thanks very much for your question. Another question here from Love Sherlock. Question: do all ex-Scientologists, SPs, have cats and dogs? I do.
I do. I have both.
She's been barking.
I have a cat, I have 2 dogs, and I have a horse.
Yeah. Thank you for your question, Love Sherlock. Okay, next one. Marilyn Honig, thanks for the super chat, Marilyn. Welcome back into our channel. We appreciate you being here. Hi, Mark and Janis. Love your videos and all the pictures and stories. Question: of those still in Scientology, who do you miss the most and or wish would come out? P.S. Janis, I thought you were from New York. Why don't you go first, Janis, on the question of
wow, put me on the spot. Who's
out?
Still in there? You know, Mark Yeager was a good friend, and I always enjoyed him as a boss. And if he ever came out, I would be there for him, you know, with no Q&A. He was a great guy. And I know he's gone through a lot of abuse. And the same as Gillham, he was a good guy. Ray Midoff, Gelda Midoff. Yeah, and even Shelley and I had our differences, but I'd help anybody. And, you know, they were all good friends.
Yeah. And for me, obviously, first choice would be my ex-wife, Julie, and her husband, Peter Schless. Also, I'm like Janis. Any of them, I would welcome out. You know what I mean? It's always fun when somebody comes out that we remember and we reconnect. Like Amy Scobie, who you guys all know from her channel, right? She came out mid-2000s, and when we reconnected with her, it was like reconnecting with an old friend. And she told us, it's a good thing you left when you did, because it got way worse.
Yeah. Well, and even Rinder's like a brother, you know. Yeah. People on the ship, we kind of become a family because of the camaraderie and what we've all gone through it together. And there's this closeness, and no matter how far you've been away from each other or how long, there's still that closeness that just makes time disappear.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Marilyn, and thank you for all that you do. We really appreciate it. Next question is from ex-Scientologist. Did either of you know Heber Jentz? Any stories? Janis.
Heber was my stepfather. He married my mom when I was 16, 17. I met him when I was 17 because they were married. And so when I'd go on leave and see my mom, Heber was always there. And I really loved Heber. He was a great guy. We got along good. He had a great sense of humor. He was a singer and an actor, and he had this convertible car that he'd lost the antenna, so he had a coat hanger in it for his antenna. And I remember one time, the first time I'd met him, my sister and I were on leave, and Mom and he were going to an event, and she had gotten him a white suit. And he was like, Yvonne, I don't want to wear this white suit. And she's like, oh, honey, you look so good in it. Anyway, they go off, and he's wearing his white suit in his convertible. And when they come back, the white suit is filthy. The car broke down, and he had to crawl under it, and he needed something to tie some part of the engine on. So he gets out, and he takes his coat hanger antenna and uses that to fix up the motor. And then when he's done with that, the suit's now a little dirty, but when he's done with that, he realizes the keys to the car are in his pocket, and his hands are all greasy. So of course he didn't like the suit in the first place. So he puts the keys he pulls the keys out with his greasy hands and by the time they got home, the white suit was destroyed and he never wore it again. Anyway, he was a good guy. And even later on, after my mom died, he ended up marrying Karen de la Carrier, who's like family to me. And he had Alexander, and he was like a little brother to my sister and I. And we stayed in touch. And then when I left, Heber was up at the gold base. He was in trouble, in ethics trouble, in cramming. DM would just find anything to try and knock Heber down. And I used to spend time with Heber at meal times, and I would drive him to and from the base. And we'd have our little conversations. And when I left, I'm sure it was a shock to him because I didn't tell him I was leaving. And they took all my photo albums and went through them and took all the pictures of Heber out. And when I was like, where are my pictures of Heber? Mike said, it's like, Heber didn't want you to have any pictures of him. And I don't really think that's how Heber would have felt. I think that was just RTC being jerks.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for your question. Here's the next question here. Diane Jean Valenciano. Question: if we show up in Las Vegas, would you both be open to a lunch? Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. Come on over.
People all the time. Just email us at janisgillhamgrady@gmail.com, or you can contact me at messengerondutymf@gmail.com. Either one. So thank you so much for that question. Okay, next. Goldie in the house. Thank you so much for the super chat, Goldie. Were you guys potty mouse when you were in? Yes, I was a little bit, because that was sort of the common everyday language, you know. We would use the F word and the S word, but nothing compared to the way Miscavige was. How about you, Janis?
Me, I tried not to because I just didn't like it. But sometimes if I got boiling mad, I could swear like a sailor. But it wasn't in my regular language. And it wasn't something that I grew up with. Yeah, there was people on the ship that swore, but Hubbard normally didn't swear. If he did in front of us, sometimes he'd tell us to pardon his French or apologize for it. But it was not, that was a Miscavige thing. That came in really bad with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And he it was a very inventive swearer. I mean, degrading swearer. Really terrible.
Very degrading.
Thanks so much, Goldie, and we appreciate all that you do. All right, next one, super sticker from Tom Miller. Thank you so much, Tom. We really appreciate it. Thanks for the super sticker. And the next one is from Brandy Mulvaney. Mark and Janis, sorry I'm late. This is my first video I've seen of yours. What was your role in Scientology? Okay, Janis, why don't you tell just a brief history for Brandy, and also where she can watch our videos too.
Okay, well, I started at the age of 12 years old as a messenger for L. Ron Hubbard, and I did that for the next 11 years. I was with him pretty much 6 hours a day, every day, except when I had liberty or I went on mission or leave. And I did that for 11 years. And then after Hubbard went into seclusion and the messengers took over management, I worked my way up where I was the Watchdog Committee member for the Mission Network. I'm the member who kicked out the finance police after they'd destroyed it. I also was the Watchdog Committee member for a short period for Celebrity Center. And I then became the Deputy WC Chairman, Deputy Chairman for Watchdog Committee. And on and off during that time, I also did some time at the Free Winds as the mission in charge to pull off the maiden voyage and as the commanding officer of the Free Winds while the real commanding officer was off getting cleaned up for gambling and drinking.
Okay.
So that's pretty much my history.
Okay, and for me, I joined Scientology when I was 15 years old through my father. I joined the Sea Organization in 1976, 78. And I started out in Clearwater and eventually ended up at the international base in Gillham Hot Springs, the secret base. And I rose through management. I was involved with a lot of the approval of different things that were taken taken on by management in terms of handling organizations. And then eventually the last 6 years, I was put in charge of and created actually David Miscavige's office at the international base, where I ran his personal staff for the last 6 years that I was there, handling his domestic, administrative, as well as dealing with anything that had to happen at the Gold Base until I finally escaped in September 1990 after being seeing the writing on the wall, and the abuses were just starting, and Miscavige had beaten me up, and I just decided that was the end for me, and so that was when I was gone. Thank you so much, Brandy. Hope that helps. Please watch our videos. You know, if you watch our introductory video, it has photographs and basically a little bit of our life history, a little bit more. And then also start watching our videos because we give a lot of information about different things that we've seen and witnessed. So thank you very much for that. Okay, next question is, here we go. Supreme Rula question concerning about ops at Greenfield School, East Grinstead, horrid place. One alumnus photo has a student with a particularly worrying vacant Scientology stare. Any views on this front, past or present? Greenfield School in East Grinstead, Janis, did you know anything about that?
Greenfield. No, I don't know Greenfield. I went to Blackwell and Sackville.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your question. Next question is here. Bach Buddy, sorry. Question. With all the years spent on the Apollo, have you ever considered going on a cruise vacation, or would you have too many bad memories to spoil the fun? Go for it, Janis.
I am a cruiser. I love cruising. I haven't been since COVID, but I had to cancel 2 cruises when COVID happened. And I've done Alaska. I've done several through the Caribbean, and I've got one booked now to go to Portugal, Canary Islands, Morocco, and Spain. That's where I'm going in October, because 6 of the 12 ports are where I used to go as a kid. Now, originally, I did not want to go on a cruise, and then my husband's like, come on, let's go. You'll like it, and I did. I enjoyed being served rather than being a slave. So I am a cruiser. I love it.
We also went to Cuba. Don't forget that.
Oh, and we did. Yeah, Cuba.
Yeah, Janis. I've gone on several cruises with Janis and a bunch of former Scientologists. We did a little video, or sorry, a little slideshow of the original SP cruise back a few years ago with Mark Headley, Aaron, Janis, me, Ron Miscavige Sr. But yeah, we went to the last cruise I went on. We went to Cuba before they shut it down. And then Haiti, we went to, we've gone lots of different places, and I love cruises too. Okay, next question. Thank you for that question. Angel Hugger. I don't know if people realize how much more time Janis spent with LRH than Miscavige. That's right.
Yes, I did. A lot more.
And we have a video. We have a video on that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, go to our channel. We have a video on how much time did actually David Miscavige spend with L. Ron Hubbard, and also we talk about the secret location in La Quinta, California, that was called W in the late 70s, and that's where Miscavige first met Hubbard. And we have photographs and all that. And so if you're interested, watch that video. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, thank you for the question. Next question here. Love Sherlock, dastardly. Good question. Was his LRH parents alive and kicking when he got the Church of Scientology started? Janis, I don't know. You might know. Was his parents still alive?
I don't know about his mother, but his father was. And
Did he come to the ship?
Yeah, HRH. He came to the ship, and he was there for maybe 2-3 weeks. And Wally Burgess was the host, and he took care of HRH Harry Ross Hubbard, and he was a little old man in his 80s at the time, and very proud of his son. And he'd come in every day. He'd go off on excursions and come back and have dinner with Ron and Mary Sue. And he'd also, one of Ron's cousins came with him. And she traveled and made sure he was okay the whole time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the question, Love Sherlock. If any other questions, go ahead and get them in. Then we'll go on to the next one here. This is from DNV 1983. What ideas of Scientology were the hardest to rid yourself of after leaving? For myself, I mean, I remember getting reacquainted and working in the real world. We expected people to do their jobs, and when they didn't do it, we could get upset with them. And I remember that getting me in a lot of trouble at the time. And so that was really hard, and it was a rude awakening in order to do that, because even just not even raising your voice, just pointing out something that somebody didn't do would cause them to report you to human resources at the drop of a hat. So getting used to dealing with the different way that people did their jobs and worked was the first thing for me. How about you, Janis?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was raised kind of more militant, in the Sea Org, and it was hard breaking old habits of having to be there and feeling guilty with incomplete things. There's a lot of guilt feeling, even going off camping or sitting down and just relaxing. It's like, I should be doing something.
Yeah, that's true. I
Yeah.
even to this day, every day, I mentally make a list of what I need to get done that day. And at the end of the day, in my head, I review, what did I get done? I mean, that's kind of drilled into you in the Sea organization. I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, I get a lot of things done that way. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even Paul, he was my husband, but up until the day he died, he was doing his battle plans every day.
Thank you for the question. The next one is here from Love Sherlock. Question: am I a bad SP that I really want DM to get what he gave to Mark, Mike, and others, but worse? No, you're not a bad SP, but I would be satisfied if he actually got arrested and went to jail. That would be great. How about you, Janis?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what he's done is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It is not what was intended with Scientology. That's not what the original intentions were. And he's changed it into something that you just don't recognize anymore.
Yeah, not at all. Hey, thanks for the question, Love Sherlock. Okay, next one. Super chat from Supreme LaRue. Thank you so much. Did you hear LRH speak of Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, and Black Magic, Janis?
No, that just wasn't something that came up in the day-to-day work or even in his stories. I was surprised when I read Russell Miller's book because it just never came up. And as I mentioned in a earlier, I think it was the last one we did, there was the Kali ceremonies that Hubbard had done. And I bring this up in my book. I talk about it where the program's chiefs or the auditors had messed up and this whole terrible ceremony was put on to give their sins in the ceremony and stabbing at a PC folder or a program folder for an org. And I was like shocked. I'm like, where did Hubbard even learn this from? Well, then I read the Russell Miller book and found out he had been involved in this type of thing many years before, but it had not come up as an activity in Scientology until that time on the ship.
Yeah, and all of L. Ron Hubbard's biography was whitewashed by Scientology. I mean, they were trying to present this wonderful picture of the man. About the only thing that came close to it was they would say, like, well, he was a man, and he was researching and investigating all sorts of different ways to try and learn the secret of mankind and how to save mankind. And I guess they kind of used that as a way of justifying the fact that he had gotten involved with Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons and Black Magic and all that crap. anyway, I'm reading about that right now again in the Barefaced Messiah. I can't recommend the book enough. It's a great book. It's really in depth. And I was wondering, how does Russell Miller have all these diary entries and that Hubbard wrote himself and all that? And it turns out that that was from Jerry Armstrong, who left, had been working in the Sea Org, and he actually took copies or took the materials and stuff and gave them to Russell Miller. So anyway, thank you for the question, Supreme Rulaw. Next question is here. Ex-Scientology, do you still have your SO uniforms or other memorabilia? The answer to that is no, because anything that had the Sea Org symbol on it, including towels that we had that were like embroidered with the Sea Org symbol, were taken by Gary Jackson Moorhead and security.
Yeah, we got to get Jackson on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to have Jackson on. I want to talk to him about. He was involved with when I escaped. You know, the 3 times that I escaped, and I'd love to hear the stories from his side of things, from being in charge of security, because I have my side of things, but I've never really heard from him. And that's a video that Janis and I have talked about, having Jackson come on and talk about that. So
yeah, anyway. Well, Paul and I were Jackson's legal guardian when he came up to the base at 14 years old.
Oh.
Yeah, so yeah, we want to talk to him. But I do have some of the memorabilia. I have my old Sea Org card, and I have some people gave me their silver rings or their campaign badges, because I'd left all mine behind. But so I have a few things like that, but not a lot.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Next question, Super Chat. Thank you so much, Gina. Boy, we really appreciate it. I enjoy your content so much. I've heard about the private investigators and stuff watching you. Have you been through a lot of fair game? Did you get hate websites? Thank you so much for sharing your lives with us. Yes, we've had hate websites. I've never looked at mine because I don't care to look at it. And the reason is because, number one, it's full of lies. But number two, the reason they want you to look at it is to interbulate or upset you. So there's no reason for me to look at it. I know what the truth is. My friends and family know what the truth is, and I have no reason to look at it. As far as fair game, we've had private investigators sent in, and Janis can tell some of those stories, and we're going to actually do videos on that. I had a guy who was a private investigator or a spy who became my best friend for like almost 9-10 years, and it wasn't until 2009 when Marty Rathbun came out and talked, to the St. Petersburg Times, that I found out that this guy that was my friend was somebody that they used to spy and run operations on me. So yeah, we've had quite a bit. How about you, Janis?
Yeah, on the hate website, yes, there's a hate website out on me. It basically says that Paul and I lost our mortgage license for committing fraud. However, as a mortgage broker, there used to be customers who would come in and try and get me to commit fraud. And one for one, every time I asked, "Oh, how'd you hear about me?" They heard about me from the internet. Well, I never promoted on the internet. So all those people, I suspect, were purposely sent in. And to this day, I still have my mortgage license. I have never lost it. I've never been accused of fraud. That's not who I am. And as a matter of fact, when they released this website on me, I was the president of the Mortgage Association for the state of Nevada.
Yep.
And also I was the chairman of the Mortgage Advisory Council for the state of Nevada to the legislator. So they just make crap up.
You also met with like Senator Harry Reid when he was a senator and Congress people and all that, didn't you?
Yeah,
representing mortgages. Yeah.
Yeah, during the whole big crash and so forth, I was a witness at congressional hearings, and I was talking to congressmen and Harry Reid as a senator. So, yeah, and meanwhile, they've got this stupid little website out on me.
Yeah. This is somebody who left school at age 12, never graduated high school, didn't know what a mortgage was when we left the Sea organization. Okay. So yeah, this is somebody. Yeah, I believe those hate websites. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Anyway, thanks so much for your question, Gina. We'll go to the next one here. Mary Sue Hubbard, how did you feel when Captain Bill was declared and started Ron's org? I had no dealings with Captain Bill, but you did, obviously, Janis.
Yeah, I always got along with Captain Bill. It was kind of a surprise to me, but Captain Bill was being mistreated and it wasn't for him anymore. And he rode off on his motorbike with Daphne Dan. And then I didn't really hear of him because I was in management, but I'm sure Oser and the GO or whatever, I know he was at St. Hill and doing videos and so forth. And when I went to Moscow and did a slideshow there on my 2 books, a lot of the people there were all part of Ron's org and highly respected Captain Bill. And I got asked, I said, "Oh, have you done OT 48 on Captain Bill's bridge?" And that was the first I'd heard of such a thing. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hey, listen, if you've got any more questions, go ahead. We're going to cut it off here because otherwise we'll be here all night and all day. But we're going to go ahead and continue answering the questions that we've got here. Next one here is from Love Sherlock. Thank you for the super chat, Love Sherlock, and your great questions. Thank you both for all your stories and info, Gail. Well, you're very welcome, and we're happy to share them. And we think it's important to get this history out. A lot of the stuff that's out there is all of the destructive negative things, and there were a lot of destructive negative things, and I don't disagree with any of that. But we want to show the history of what happened because, there were a lot of good people, including Janis and myself. Janis was born into it, but her parents and all that, we got involved in Scientology for a reason. And so we're trying to show a little bit of the history as to what was positive about it, but also what was negative. We're not blind to that. So anyway, we want to thank you, Love Sherlock, for that. Okay. Next question here. Jenny Fernandez, question. Janis sure knew David Mayo at St. Hill. Does she remember him?
Yes, I knew David Mayo. Well, he knew my parents in 1959 during the Melbourne Congress. He came over from New Zealand to Melbourne for that, and that's where he met my parents. And I was just 3 years old at the time. And then I met him again at St. Hill, and then he was on the ship for probably a good 5-6 years. So I knew him during that whole time period. And then when we were in La Quinta, he came up to La Quinta. Meanwhile, he'd been the senior CS, the case supervisor at the Flag Land Base. And then he came up to La Quinta and was there auditing Hubbard. And then later on, even when we moved to Hemet, he was living at the apartments that we called X, which is where Hubbard was living. And David lived there as well because he was auditing Hubbard every single day.
Okay, and we'll do, like we said, a video on David Mayo because he was integral in terms of what was going on in Scientology, and we'll be covering that. Janis and I both knew him, and there's lots of stories to tell. Okay, next question is from Cheryl Texarkana. Question, what does a divorce look like in the C of S? Because the weddings are cuckoo. Janis?
Divorces are all done through the U.S. legal system.
Yeah.
If one wanted to get divorced, first they would normally go through a co-audit to audit each other and get their overt transgressions and their withholds off to try and get the secrets out of the way to patch things back up.
Yeah, because the end result was that you didn't get divorced. I mean, Scientology believed that you're supposed to stay together, and the only reason that you're not staying together, which is not true, but the only reason they believe is because you've committed transgressions against each other or you're withholding information from each other. And if you come clean, that you'll decide to stay together. It doesn't take into effect that people sometimes just completely go in different directions in terms of their life and their career and purpose and that type of thing. And so there are valid reasons to get divorced. But that was what they tried to do. They tried to handle it. Is that good enough, Janis?
Yes. Good job, Mark.
All right. Next question. Jenny Fernandez again. Question, was Quentin gay?
I don't know. I know when I was 16, I was one of his choices to get married to. And he had a lot of female friends. He was a friendly guy. I have heard many rumors that he was. Not many rumors, because it all actually goes, I've traced it all back to one person who says that he had an affair with him. But I know when we were on the ship, there was the Commodore steward, Eva Anderson, and Quentin lived with her for probably a good year. She lived in his cabin with him.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question is, ex-Scientologist Janis, did Diana Hubbard sing while you were at St. Hill? I have her album Lifetimes.
No, I have that same album. No, she did not sing. She just played the piano.
Okay. Next question. We're getting close to the end here, folks. Brandy Mulvaney, Mark, did you say the 3 times you escaped? Yeah, they're all interrelated. The first time was around Memorial Day, or actually around this time in 1990. My wife had been assigned to the Rehabilitation Project Force by Miscavige. I worked for Miscavige. I didn't agree with it, and we were allowed to go to her brother's wedding in San Diego, and I went with her. And while I was down there with her, I decided that I couldn't be without my wife. So I decided when we got back to the base, I'm shortcutting this story a lot. I decided to leave. So I took off for 3 days with the intention of coming back, because I knew then they would assign me to the Rehabilitation Project Force, and I'd be able to be back with my wife. We'd been married for 6 years at that time. Anyway, when he found out, Miscavige found out that I wanted to go to the RPF, he said, "Oh no, that's too good for him. We're not going to do that." So I was put on the grounds doing, landscaping and stuff in the middle of the summer in Gillham Hot Springs when it's 110 outside. Anyway, the second time I blew was same day that Janis and her husband blew, and that was after the flood that occurred. We had a famous flash flood that happened at the base that wiped out these sports fields and these hotel units that were going to be used for Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. And I was standing next to Janis's husband, Paul. We didn't even speak to each other, but we were both thinking the same thing. Miscavige was basically cussing everybody out at a briefing of the whole base of 600 people. And I thought, he's a rabid dog. He's gone crazy. I need to leave. So I left the second time. And I went to my sister's house, who was a Scientologist. She turned me in. So I came back, but they made the mistake of telling me, "Oh, Janis and Paul Grady left last night too." So then I was like, wow, I'm not alone, so I'm not crazy. Anyway, so then the final time I left was after I came back, because I couldn't leave my wife. But when I finally realized, after escaping twice and all that they'd turned her against me, the third time was after I realized that she wasn't going anywhere. And so September 15th, 1990, I left for good. I threatened to go to the police if they didn't give me my car and my stuff, and they didn't want to deal with any of that. So they gave me the stuff, and out I went. That's it. And we'll go into more detail later. I have photographs and things like that, but that's the brief Cliff Notes version. Thanks very much, Brandy. Next question is, Anon. I'm always interested in the old history of Scientology. Hannah Whitfield is one of my favorites. Janis?
Yeah, I'm actually going to ask Hannah to come on. She went through some medical surgery recently, so I'm waiting for her to recover from that. And then I'll see if she'll come do an interview with us and tell some more stories.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next question here. Were both of you surprised when Mike Rinder blew? Yeah, I was surprised. Well, we didn't know right away that he blew, but when I heard that he blew, I was surprised.
I wasn't surprised, but I was happy. Yeah. Mike had been a good friend, and I was glad he saw the light.
Yeah.
But not happy when I heard the stories of, he's being beaten up and everything.
Yeah.
But it was a good choice that he left.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, next question is, Love Sherlock question. Do you know why you and other ex-Scientologists have such great memories, at least the ones I watch on YouTube? I've always had a really good memory. I remember facts. I remember trivia. As a matter of fact, it's really funny. A funny story, because I used to read a newspaper every day when I was a kid from the age of 10, right? Even when I was in the Sea Org, I had a subscription to USA Today, and I read it every day. I think I was the only person on the base that knew what was going on in the world. Anyway, Miscavige I'd always interject something that was going on in the world and all that. And Miscavige always used to criticize me, saying like, "Oh, you know just trivial knowledge. You don't really know important stuff, right?" But I'd done the organization executive briefing course and the flag executive briefing course, and I graduated from all that stuff. And as a punishment, when I was before I left, he actually had a supervisor actually go through the entire green volumes, the organization executive course, and check me out on every single policy letter in every single volume. And I think I passed on average of 88% of the policy letters I passed, right? And that would be like a B or B plus in any school that I ever went to. But of course, I was full of misunderstood words and a failure because of that. And I'd studied this stuff like 4 or 5 years earlier. So I've always had a good memory. Janice?
Yeah, well, I had to remember messages for message runs. So,
yeah.
And yeah, so I worked on my memory, and then I don't know, somehow certain things would just hit me and I could remember them, and along with dates. But there were also times where I thought I'd remembered things how it should be. And as I said in an early interview, when I was writing my books, someone gave me the orders of the day. So I started going through those to help, put my story together. And that's when I was like, oh, this happened here, and this happened here, and oh, and this else also happened, and it happened this way. So it wasn't that I remembered everything so well, but I did have issues, and using the orders of the day helped. So I can have a good memory and a bad, depending on what it is.
Okay. Anyway, we're down to the last 4 questions. Janice, don't start anymore because we'll be here.
Okay.
So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get through these here for you guys. One Love 51000 question: do you think if another person took over the helm, do you think you might still be in Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard style? If I'll tell you this, I mean, I wouldn't have left if Miscavige wasn't in charge. Now, it's been 33 years since I left. A lot of things could have changed. But if he hadn't attacked me and the abuses weren't going, I would have stayed, okay, until I got to the point where I thought, well, no, I need to leave, But, as far as now, if they changed it over and all that, there'd have to be some major changes for me to get involved in it again. How about you, Janis?
I would probably still be there if I was working for Mark Yeager. But that didn't happen. So I'm not going back. And yeah, that answers it.
Okay, good. Next question here is Bach Buddy. Question: with LRH's obsession with money, did he walk around with a lot of cash in his pockets when he left the ship, or was there an aid to buy his stuff?
He went to Big and Tall men's store to buy some clothes, and it was all cash in his pocket.
Did he normally walk around with a bunch of cash?
No. But when he went out, he took cash with him. He didn't use credit cards because he'd need his name and everything on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did have cash on him to buy things, but he wasn't one to really go buy things. So he wanted to get some clothes because all his stuff was ship type clothes when we moved ashore. And so he went into Big and Tall and he had cash. And he did go buy cars using cash as well.
Julie, my ex-wife, told me that I think when he was in Hemet or when he was at X or whatever, that sometimes that she went with him, or some of the messengers went with him to a grocery store. He wore like a wig and a hat because he had this little camera that he wanted to test out, and he was taking photographs of the people in the grocery store without them knowing. And then he ended up buying a bunch of candy and stuff for the messengers. Is that true? Were you involved in that?
Yeah, no, that's true. He would go to the grocery store, and he had this hat that Kimma had sewn some fake hair on, so the fake hair hung out below the hat. And then he'd have glasses on, and yeah, he'd go around and take photographs. One time, John Brousseau was with us as the driver, but I was wearing flip-flops, and he gives me a long lecture on flip-flops and how they can mess up your toes if someone steps on it in the back or whatever. So next to the grocery store was a shoe shop. So he took me into the shoe store and brought me a different pair of shoes so that I wasn't wearing flip-flops. And then we went into the grocery store and there was nobody else. Kimmer was off on Liberty and so forth. So we went and we bought some steaks. And then we went back to X, and it was just he and I. And he told me, you know, put salt in the pan and cooked up the steaks and had dinner together.
Okay.
But yeah, he bought that stuff with cash. He didn't use credit cards.
Thanks, Bach Buddy, sorry. Next one, Supreme Rula. DM has been ratting around on his own so long. Does he have any romantic ties? Tom Cruise can't get a girlfriend, so assume David Miscavige can't. Who would want to, right? We have no idea. I don't know at all. I mean, obviously Shelley's missing and all that, but yeah. Anyway, that's what I. Do you have any answer on that, Janis?
No, I have no information since we left. I was there when you started dating Shelley. The messengers involved with management. We were all down in Los Angeles. Shelley was up at Gold, and every Libs, Dave used to drive up to Gold to go see Shelley.
Okay. And this is going to be our last question here.
No, there's one more that I started.
Oh, there is? Okay. Question, do you remember exactly where the Guardian's office was in Los Angeles? I went there once, and I remember it was in an office down in the parking structure. Hubbard granted me so much beingness.
Okay. The Guardian's office used to be in the Manor on the 6th and 7th floor, and that's where the FBI went and raided. And then the Intelligence Bureau of the Guardian's office was over in the complex off of where the horseshoe was, that by Fountain. Yeah. And you could go where Income now is or was later on, but the B1 used to be in there.
Right.
And then Heber's office was off of the grand entrance on Fountain going into the complex.
Right. Okay, thank you so much. And here's our last question. Timothy MC, I'm a new subscriber. Thank you for subscribing. And anybody who's here, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We can use it. It lets people know our stories. Question, are you two married? I know you are not married to each other. I am not married. I haven't married since I've been out of the Sea Org. Julie was my one and only wife, and I've had relationships since then, but nothing that I've committed to. So I'm not married. How about you, Janis?
Yeah, I was married for 41 years to Paul Grady. And then in December of 2021, he died from COVID. And so I am now a widow for the last year and a half.
Except for Rocky and Moose, right?
Well, those are my replacements.
Yeah, and I have Misha, my dog. And Rocky and Moose are Janis's dogs.
Yeah, I didn't like coming home to an empty house, so I got 2 dogs.
Hey, it's unconditional love. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Timothy. We want to thank everybody here for coming and watching our slideshow about St. Hill. If you missed it at all, you can replay it and watch it again. And we want to ask you to please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and hit notifications. If you have any other questions, please ask in the comment section, and we always read the comments, and we'll be happy to answer anything that was missed here. And if you like Janis's book, she has 2 books, Commoner's Messenger, Book 1 and Book 2. There's links in our description page where you can order them on Amazon. And then if you want, like we mentioned earlier, an autographed copy, just email Janis at janisgilhamgrady@gmail.com. And we'll go from there. Janis, have you got anything else that you'd like to say or thank everybody?
It's been fun. I'm loving the questions, going back and forth, and you're helping my memory, so you're keeping me young. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you the next time on our next video. Have a great day.